Hello and welcome everybody to another Writer's Craft Workshop. I think that's what I'm going to call it. So I'm glad to have everybody here. I need to put this in the live stream videos real quick. But this is going to be interesting. So first off, I need to bring in my wonderful guests. First off...
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, how's it going? Always a pleasure, Neff.
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, I'm going to do a couple things. One, I need to announce we have a Rumble channel for everybody. Yep. So if anybody wants to come on over to that, I am putting up our commentaries, but little preview parts will be on on YouTube, just so you know. Well, no, actually, the bot is gone. The bot is gone. I accidentally turned it off, and now because Discord is now monetizable, I can't turn it back on.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, thankfully it's fine.
It's also fine. Kind of dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb, but it's just it's a slight convenience that they're making you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, there we go. Now should ping people. Alrighty, so now let's bring in our good friend the Bard.
Here's to the Bard and the calling me plum. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is locked in and the town is aflame, and it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Alrighty, cool. Always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Yep. And we also have our living bomb. Welcome, Johan.
Is everything ready? Do it.
Thousands of souls extinguished by the push of a button.
Understand, Yuri? This is only the beginning.
Never gets old. Never gets old.
Hello, Johan.
Hello.
And
Nice to see you all.
Yep. And we have our sagely Balerion curmudgeon. Welcome, Balerion.
Great a lot.
And as ever, we have our resident, not resident Rosie Cotton reincarnation.
No, Bright Rod.
Oh.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, don't discourage him from saying the normal ones.
Well,
Greetings.
Yeah.
Well.
Hello.
Oh, no, don't. Please. Fuck off.
I didn't say anything at all.
No, you didn't. Very true, and we should probably remain that way.
Yes. Let's have
So here's how it is gonna work. So rather than us 6 people being on and kind of talking over each other, what we're gonna be doing instead is we've kind of divvied it up by topics. So while kind of for the group that is discussing, it'll probably be like 4-ish, and we will kind of like rotate people out and kind of I'll kind of the people not discussing will either mute themselves or shall I just mute you? Or shall we just mute? Shall the people who are not discussing the topic just mute, or shall I just temporarily remove you from the stream and then bring you back in when you come in? How do you think we should do that?
I'd say mute.
Yeah, mute.
Mute, yeah.
All right.
I can mute myself.
Okay, cool. Hi, welcome, aspiring writer Tyler Preston. Always a pleasure. And I think currently we've got 5 other people, 5 people watching currently, so that's good. Drake the Duelist, nice to see you. So this is going to be our Prezi for the day. It's a little bit simple, but the first thing that we wanted to talk about today, and the current thing is going to be, currently it's Neff, Tarek, and Beck. Johan, Becca, and Tarek are on McGuffins, I believe. And
You totally figured this out.
yeah. No, I don't.
It was really hard to remember. I know.
Oh no, I have it. It's just I wrote it out weird. Or at least StreamYard is weird.
Need to get better glasses then.
Oh, I don't need glasses. It's just I formatted it wrong.
It happens. It happens.
Okay, I'll just put it in the chat. So, okay, so currently, Johan, Becca, and Tarek, and if Neff wants to chat, it's totally fine. Everybody else want to mute it, and we'll talk about McGuffins.
All right.
So I think it's going to be a combination of things with the McGuffin talk. We're going to talk about like how you can theoretically use McGuffins well, but you can also, but kind of like, I guess, like give examples from our own work or from anything that we've seen or heard. So most of like kind of the McGuffin is kind of I found that it's kind of a placeholder narrative device for something more interesting, really. It's mainly there to kind of like get the plot going, and then as the plot keeps like once the characters are invested, usually the MacGuffin doesn't have very much importance. The exception being the One Ring, or any like J.J. Abrams mystery box object is kind of an example of a MacGuffin, like the Rabbit's Foot in Mission Impossible 3, the Death Star plans in Force Awakens, and
Give me a New Hope.
Yeah.
If I may say something,
Yeah,
I
go
would
for it.
say that J.J. Abrams mystery boxes are MacGuffins done wrongly.
Oh
and
yes,
really,
definitely.
really badly.
Yeah, it's extreme. Kind of J.J. Abrams mystery boxes is kind of just like a perfect example of something that's like, this is just a lazy narrative device.
Yeah.
No shit. No fucking
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. So how do you guys want to like do the rest of it? Do you want to do the so like do you want to like do examples from your own work? Like so with a MacGuffin, like I haven't really used MacGuffin very much.
I haven't either, which is one of the reasons why I'm okay with not being one of the people to really go in depth about it. I do know a lot, so I can answer questions if needed. But
okay, Johan.
I have one. I'm trying to currently write it, but it is indeed difficult to make it happen and make use of it without making the plot too much depending on it. Well, it depends on it, but it needs not to be depending on it. Like, oh, now it's work. It needs to be ramping up. It needs to be like, you have this threat of, for instance, you have this threat of the ring, being in possession of Sauron, and you work towards getting there to gain tension. Like, oh no, this is now happening, and the ring is now moving towards that location. What will happen, you know? And what I did with my McGuffin, it is a useless object if you don't use it. All right, it is an object that is still there. It doesn't do anything. It is still there, but it is important that it doesn't come into enemy hands. And the more longer the story goes on, the more tension it makes. The more the more you see of the other characters being like, "Fuck, something is wrong, and we need to make sure that this thing does not go into the enemy hands." And we're still, doing more stuff to make sure that it doesn't go into the enemy hands. And eventually it doesn't go into the enemy hands, and then the story ends. That is the main idea. Like, they found a way to make sure that it doesn't go into the enemy hands to prevent certain types of events from happening, which they feared. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
See, interestingly, in my own stuff, I have objects that are kind of the example of objects that are so... They do all of the MacGuffin stuff, but on top of that, they're so powerful and to the point that they become their own magic system, that they don't have the useless aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they do all of the plot things that are MacGuffin things. They do the, oh my god, these can't go into enemy hands things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because they do shit, and you see them doing, and not only that, because obviously the One Ring can do stuff, but it doesn't necessarily do any of those things in the story. Whereas
it's only
these
useful if
things
Sauron
do.
does it. It's only useful if Sauron gets it. It has no utility for the main characters. Like, the object of the ring is to not use it.
Yeah. And there's an element of, to be fair, there's an element of that with my things, but more on the level of it's repulsive to the characters to want to use them.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
they don't use them, generally speaking, except in extreme circumstances when it wreaks havoc. So there's like an interesting sort of midpoint when it comes to when does something stop being a MacGuffin. And I know it's usually when it's useless, but at the same time you can have objects that do all of the same things as a MacGuffin but still don't have that quality. I don't know.
So what I've found with MacGuffins, they're usually the motivators for treasure hunt stories. Like everything in every Indiana Jones movies, there's always a MacGuffin.
Well,
So like the Holy Grail and the what was it?
well, hold on.
Boss Ark, yeah.
In Last Crusades, was it really the Holy Grail that was the MacGuffin, or was it Henry Jones's diary? Because it led them, because they throughout the movie they're chasing after that diary to get to the Holy Grail. I think the diary was the MacGuffin more than the Holy Grail.
That's actually a fair thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kind of the question of, well, done MacGuffins an object. Yeah.
I think personally that the best way to use a MacGuffin is not as a plot device, but as it needs to serve more than one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is the ring, when the ring for Frodo was the call to adventure. In, not taking a quote from the hero's journey here, it was the call to adventure. And the diary in Indiana Jones served a similar function, but it was also a very utilitarian function because they needed to use it throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in order to have an effective MacGuffin, it can't just be the win button. It has to be useful throughout the story.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to have like some kind of grounding with the environment around it, like the story that's going on, the characters or the world, or something that means that it doesn't feel kind of plonked in there.
Right. But let me ask you guys this. What do you guys feel about MacGuffins that are introduced very late into the story?
They're usually
if
very lazy.
No,
it depends.
I don't like it at all.
It depends if the if the story explains why it is there, if the story makes no sense why it's there, and it only serves just to get the hero from point A to point B, no, thank you.
I think I know why you're asking. Is it because of the movie we watched the other night?
No, it's because of something I have planned out.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'll pitch this real quick. Someone in the story gets hurt, like mortally wounded. He or she may have like 45 minutes to an hour to live, if you get what I mean. They're bleeding out at this point. They're trying to stop it, but they can't close the wound. So Aviana has to go get a flower from the mage's college. She has to steal it. And she's now robbing from mages. She is, like critical. She's now enemy of the state #1. She stole from mages. So this is also alluded to early in the book that these flowers have
healing possibilities.
Okay. I think that would just be like an element of the story, wouldn't it, rather than like something that's plot relevant.
Yeah, what I was going to say was just as long as it's set up, like if you introduce it out of the blue with no like no warning, then it doesn't kind of work. But if you set it up early on that it exists, but then don't use it until later, that's fine in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I use the McGuffin of a stationary object that is constantly being worked on by the main protagonist, trying to fix and find a solution to the outcome towards getting rid of it. So he feels bad for making it, and now he wants to get rid of it, but he cannot get rid of it because of all the things that are going on. So he's trying to disable the device. Let's put it that way. Before everything goes to smithereens.
Yeah. I think that's actually a very good point. Like generally, like MacGuffin, yeah, it's something that nobody really cares about. I don't know how. Yeah. I think one example of like a human character is as a MacGuffin is actually Elora Danon and Willow, where because of her, she comes into Willow Offgood's life, and from there he is now on his adventure trying to defeat Queen Bavmorda while also preserving the life of this baby and get her from point A to point B. And in a lot of ways, like Willow is kind of Star Wars and Wizard's drag, just like Aragon is Star Wars and Dragon Rider drag. But it's I think it's kind of like it's an interesting enough story, but like the funny thing is like it's kind of funnier because Lucasfilm also did Willow alongside Star Wars, so it's just kind of funny to me. So,
the Sword of Power of He-Man. I think that's also one.
I don't know does that motivate the plot of He-Man, or is it just kind of Grayskull as the MacGuffin of where that's the thing they're fighting over?
That could also be the thing. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Bard died, and
also the new He-Man is not gonna be about He-Man, although the title says He-Man.
Yeah. I think Professor Geek did a lengthy video about how much like it looks like it's gonna be bad, and I've never been interested in He-Man to begin with, so. I don't like any.
I just.
Sorry, one at a time. Becca, then Johan.
No, it wasn't me. It was Neff.
Yeah, it was me. If I may, I think I have an excellent example of a MacGuffin. It's from Eastern anime, though, so you might not know what it is, but it's the Jinzo Isho from Sailor Moon. In the first arc, everybody's looking for both the crystal and the princess that it belongs to. So both of them are the McGuffin,
Oh,
at least to begin with.
oh, so
And
in
then-
that.
Yeah, the Jinzo Isho continues to be a MacGuffin, even though the princess does not.
So, like with the Yu-Gi-Oh, with Yugi's amulet, the the
that
Pharaoh's
kind of
amulet.
thing. Yes.
Yeah, all of
Hey,
the
I
Millennium
found a new
items are essentially MacGuffins. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. My
No
mom
worries.
accidentally unplugged the internet.
Oh no! Oh, no.
That is a very common thing that also happens here. Trust me. You're staying way too long on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops.
Mid sentence.
Wow. Oh,
Smack.
Becca was very, very, very concerned for her Barty Bard's AP.
He just rolled a terrible persuasion on his mom's advice, like, "Hey, I don't want to be, I just want to be doing this," and then it's like, "No, you can't," and it's out. It's God damn it.
Mhm.
Tarek's
Sorry.
mum's too nice to do it deliberately.
Dun dun dun, and so
Yeah.
the plot begins.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're dealing with another plot right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Plotted right. But yeah, what I wanted to say was like they actually just want to make a new She-Ra, but they can't. That's why they just gotta be transforming He-Man into She-Ra. Oh well.
But what did you guys think about what I said though about not about the work, about introducing MacGuffin late into the game?
It is possible.
Well,
It is possible.
I think it's possible. I think I don't know if I would kind of consider what you're doing like a MacGuffin really.
I wouldn't
think it's
consider
mainly-
it that either.
I think it's mainly I think it's a plot device rather than a MacGuffin. MacGuffin is usually something at the beginning that motivates the plot. Like an item in a treasure hunt story is usually like the prime example.
But it could potentially be a MacGuffin for the start
Yeah.
of the series if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that one plot
yeah.
device kind of spiraled events as they go
Yeah.
for the rest of the series.
Well, when you were describing it, you were talking about how you were going to set, like, until you said you were going to set it up. My point was going to be, well, so long as you set it up, and I don't think you're going to have a problem if it's like kind of hinted at early.
Right.
Yeah.
I
As
guess-
long.
I was about to say, I guess Morat Sova's collar in Shadow and Bone would be, at least for book one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. I need
The collar made from the antlers.
Yes. Is that the conduit thing, or am I getting
Yeah.
confused?
No, that is the conduit thing.
Yes.
Shadow and Bone is kind of like Baby's Wheel of Time in some ways.
Oh yeah.
Baby
I
White
have-
Wheel of Time.
Wheel of
With
Time.
like Russian like undertones or overtones even.
Yeah,
Very-
but basically a very a high helping of Russian flavor.
With vodka.
An example: Transformers 2.
The leadership matrix, which was not introduced till like an hour and a half in.
Jeez. Okay. That's
Thinking
way
back,
too
that
late.
was not done well.
Yeah, and throughout the movie, you have to deal with Skids and Mudflap, who are actually legit racist caricatures. It's nah. We don't really do much reading.
And they have buck teeth and everything and dread. I think one of them has dreads, and it is something.
It's kind of like the black dude from Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. Only
No, because he
Oh,
at least they got a black guy to play him. This is voiced by Tom Kenny.
The voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. Yeah, it's a white guy doing essentially like vocal blackface. It's kind of just really.
Really?
Yeah.
Supposed to be Mark's
Yeah.
Matrix of Leadership.
Yeah, that is supposed to be the Matrix of Leadership.
Bullshit.
Why does it have a? Who would put that on a stand like that? Like it's from Guaranteed Treasures or whatever that magazine is.
I don't know.
It
What
looks
even
so
is it?
ugly.
Yeah, it's like it's BS. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's
Don't-
just
don't-
yeah. Well, no, this is from the. Well, I know this is from like 2008, 2009, I think.
2008. Yeah.
2008, yeah. I'm not sure. I think it's mainly like I think that's an incentive rather than a MacGuffin because like you know what ATM does.
It's kind of a little bit nebulous because although it is a cache, it's like it's more of a goal that they're going towards, and
Yeah.
it's not like, and because they have ATM outside of that, like,
I
yeah.
think one of the most famous examples is just the Maltese Falcon. Like the Maltese Falcon is not like I think like I haven't really seen the movie. I've just seen talked about the like as far as I am aware, the Maltese Falcon has no utility that anybody really knows about, and it's just like it is just an object that the bad guys are after because because it's valuable or worth a lot of money.
Isn't
It doesn't have any plot utility. It just has it's just kind of there.
Isn't the Infinity Gauntlet not also a MacMuffin?
I think each of the Infinity Stones are MacGuffins. Yes.
Yeah.
The Gauntlet
In their own
itself.
movie. Yeah.
And then when you see the new series of Loki, you are totally disappointed that there are like 15 being totally useless.
Yeah, these universe-destroying objects. There's like paperweights worth of them. Yay!
Oh, we just
I know,
nullified everything. What? Yeah, and
Okay.
anybody who disagrees with us gets liquefied.
So, any other like thoughts on MacGuffins? before
how do you say that? Environment be a MacMuffin?
an environment being
The-
MacGuffin?
Do you mean a biome?
Like Arkham City from Batman, because it technically triggers everything.
I don't think so. Since usually like
Not in
it's
that
an
way.
it's an object rather than an environment. Like that's just like a plot decision rather than a.
I would argue that's a setting rather than anything else. But I will actually, you know what? I think the Hollow Earth from King Kong versus Godzilla may be considered a MacGuffin because everybody wants to get there. It does something special. It's driving the plot for a while. And I think it may actually qualify.
Or
like
I think
Atlantis.
Or the Mysterious Island and all Mysterious Island adaptations.
Ooh, yeah. Or Atlantis,
Atlantis would count.
I'd say the treasure map from Treasure Planet.
Or
Yes.
Treasure Island.
Oh yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Treasure Planet, Treasure Island, same difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely interesting seeing like the different levels of utility they have, whether they're just like a device of which you're making sure the enemy doesn't get versus something that they're actually using at the same time.
Or the Narnia closet, is that a MacMuffin?
No, that's a
No.
No.
transportation device.
Yeah, it doesn't like it's not helpful to the plot once they've used it.
And nobody else wants it.
Yeah.
Ah, touche.
Well, that is true.
I speak fluently heresy. Yeah.
I actually stole that line from Tuck Everlasting. You speak blasphemy, sir, fluently. I love that line. I think that line's hilarious. Yeah, they are all information based. It's basically just there's something here that is valuable. Go get it. Here's the method of obtaining it.
Yeah.
Like unobtainium, for example, is
Unobtainium.
Is from Avatar is definitely a MacGuffin. It's just it is valuable and people want it.
Or the library of the Forgotten Library in Avatar.
Or yeah. Or let me think. I don't think the MacGuffin. I don't think that would count as a MacGuffin. It's just like
it triggered most of the events.
Not of. I think that's just like a wellspring of information. It's not. It doesn't motivate the plot of the whole series. It's only like of.
It holds the scroll towards the Fire Nation's evasion.
I don't think that counts. I don't know if that counts.
I wouldn't. This is an Avatar: The Last Airbender, the date of the eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that counts either. That's just information they have. It's not like the Fire Nation knows they have it. It's not like it really means anything to them because they don't know it's going to occur. Like until Azula learns. But even then, the scroll itself and the information is not really a MacGuffin. It's not driving anything.
Yeah.
It's moving timetables, I agree with that, but it's not moving the plot itself.
All right.
It just kind of affects. It's just kind of a character perspective change, really.
The genie lamp, maybe then in Aladdin, maybe that's a MacGuffin.
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would do that.
Yeah, I would count that. Yeah, I would count that. Yeah, that's definitely a MacGuffin
Yes! Another one.
All right. I think that covers MacGuffins at least.
Yep.
Final thoughts.
Thank you for this useful information. I will tell you that.
Of course, glad to be.
I'm very happy that I might be able to imply that later on. One day.
Alrighty. So, should we move to tone and word choice with Net, Balerion, and Becca?
Sure.
Yep.
Alrighty. Everybody else, please mute, and we'll bring you on for the next bit. So, tone and word choice. So, shall we do unique weapons first?
I can't make a decision, Dan. Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
yes, just do it. Just do it. Just do it.
Okay, let's just do tone. I think tone is really fairly easy. It's just know the tone that you're going for, and
make sure you're consistent.
Yeah, because kind of like Dumb and Dumber is consistently written with bathos in order to make you laugh. They understand what kind of tone they're going for. It's very irreverent. They're meant to go in what is the most annoying sound? You get stuff they're not trying for high drama. They're going for stuff want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Pardon me.
And then the guy just stop, and then the guy's just stop it! I can't take it.
Okay, but for tone and word choice, we're not just going to talk about film, surely. I mean, because that's something that's a big part of. That's not so much a big part of the visual media as of actual, literature in terms of those little black blotches on white stuff and all that kind of thing. Yeah, and that's what we're mostly writing anyway, because most of us are not in a position to write films.
Yeah,
we're in a position to write these little things called books.
Well,
You're being obnoxious, but they are.
Lord of the Rings qualifies as both. And,
yes.
Well, I think
I'm talking about I think just in terms of a tone, it understands what exactly it is, and it just sticks to that tone. and that's kind of useful across mediums. Like if I like Dragon Blasters is consistently an irreverent comedy that doesn't really like take itself that seriously, at least like not most of the time. But when it does get serious, I make sure to take things as seriously as possible.
I'm going to say something.
Oh, go for it, Balerion.
Thank you. I'm going to say something mildly critical of Brandon Sanderson, and this might be a matter of taste, but sometimes his word choices and tone seems off because sometimes it seems very contemporary, like very contemporary American, and somehow when people say things like infused or being optimistic about something or talking about sexism in like Rochard, it just feels off. I mean, why are they talking about sexism when the sex roles are so ingrained in our society and men aren't meant to read or write? You know, why are you even talking about that in that context? Optimistic is just journalese.
Well, it's sexist in the opposite direction.
Yeah, but
and
why
it's
are
all
people...
due to their religion.
He's not really talking about the plot. He's talking about the specific word choice of that.
Oh yeah, okay, I can definitely understand that.
I think that's quite an interesting one. I think that's generally quite a Sanderson thing to kind of almost translate into what
the moderator would understand.
Yeah, I think that's almost a little bit of a translation thing rather than, because although you've got to kind of give a bit of a tone with the words that you're using, because he's almost got so much to go into, it's like sometimes there needs to be a bit shorthand. I mean, he does it a bit more. Interestingly, with Mistborn, a lot of the time it's actually like the banter is quite modern sounding. And that's kind of like almost shorthand for like, these guys get along really well. I don't have time to write banter that's more archaic sounding. I'm writing modern banter because it's just easier, and it works and it's wonderful. But I can see the point. Sometimes it doesn't quite land with him. That's probably one of his weaker kind of points, to be honest, with Sanderson. I was going to say though, it depends on when you're talking about tone. Sometimes you're talking about like the overall thing, and that's when you're talking about the tone of Dumb and Dumber, that's kind of what you're going for. But when you're talking like a little bit more situational, that's kind of almost where it gets interesting. And I mean, a lot of my favorite kind of comedies and stuff are ones that kind of play with tone and will sort of, I know generally it is comedy that does it, but sometimes it's like drama that goes into comedy, sometimes that will like, you have a tone but you deviate a bit or you use it as contrast, but you obviously have to do it carefully. But I mean, like, I love the Cornettos, the Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and all that, and so there are moments in those that are it's deliberately playing with serious stuff on occasion in order to create the comedy. Yeah,
GRRM is good at writing banter while still using a relatively archaic style, a mildly archaizing style. So he's relatively good at that. Although he also overdoes the sex things, and people use cuss words too more often than they really ought to be.
Yeah, I think like it's just because George R. R. Martin's kind of a crass dude at heart.
Yeah, kind of, yes.
Though, kind of his, like, one thing that's interesting is, like, who here has heard of the Sword of Truth series? Other than Neff, I know that I've shown her the first 2 episodes of the TV show, and I showed her a review by Daniel Green about it.
I feel like it's ringing a bell, but that might just be me hearing quite a fairly generic sounding fantasy series going.
Basically, the book it has a massive tone problem.
Okay.
The first book basically goes from stuff that's like Winnie the Pooh wholesome to George R.R. Martin style torture porn.
What the? Okay.
I don't want any of the bull torture porn.
Unless you're doing a very bizarre comedy, please don't do that.
Even if.
I mean, bizarre comedy. Come on. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm British, but
yeah, like it goes from a dog that has been like a man who's been turned into a dog because he accidentally got confessed to mind control. He got turned into a simp by magic.
What the?
Okay.
And then it goes to a guy being ramsified in very great detail. Like it shows you everything that is being done to this poor guy.
Remind me not to read this book.
It's a 14-book series, actually.
Oh God.
Oh. Okay, remind me not to read any of those 14 books then.
Yeah.
I remember one of, and you know, it applies to any kind of writing, but I remember one of the rules we got taught was that when it comes to at least tone in like screenplays and stuff, if you're writing a longer screenplay, like if your characters are going to be swearing, like a soft way to introduce that is to have like a conversation near the beginning where they swear, like so that you've got that set up for the people watching that they're like, okay, this is how the characters talk. Because if it's like halfway through the movie that they suddenly start all like, you know, and you can do that sometimes because sometimes it's just a specific character is like that and they don't turn up until halfway. But generally speaking, if you're going to set up a specific bit of tone that is maybe a bit of tone that is different or it doesn't show in the parts of the writing, put that element near the beginning if you can. Because otherwise you're going to end up with a bit of a whiplash, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless you want whiplash and you're handling it well, but
like one example of really bad tone, like where it's just Michael Bay, like for whatever reason, had dogs humping twice in the space of like I think like 10 minutes. I think
someone needs to check Michael Bay's head at some point.
No comment.
Yeah, there's even a line in the movie.
I don't envy it, but...
There's even a line. There's even a line that says, "Mojo, stop dominating Frankie."
No comment.
Word choice is also important to character arcs, but I'll bring that up when we're talking about actual character arcs instead of tone word choice.
Also, characterization. I think one of the best writers who does this is actually Joe Abercrombie, where what he does is he very carefully picks like how he wants his characters to talk. And like one example is I think it's Morovia in Best Served Cold. He's a poisoner with a very elevated vocabulary. Versus a man named I think it's not Shiver, Cole Shivers, who's more of a monosyllabic barbarian type. So kind of like there's kind of that difference between those two characters, and you can kind of see like, oh, okay. Even in their own internal monologue, they sound very different to each other.
Yeah, Martin's good at that too. Even though people cuss a lot, Sansa never does. I mean, she says WHORE, but that's all. That's not even a cuss word in their culture.
It's more of a statement of profession.
Yes.
Yeah. I, because I'm a little bit of a metaphor girl. I like writing metaphors probably more than I should. And one of the things I try to do, because I've got 8 POVs in my novel. That's fun. But in the different POVs, I try to use metaphors that are like specific to that character or like relate to something, the things that are sort of in there, even if it's not like specific things that are actually in their lives, but in like things that just sort of feel a bit more them. I try and keep it as consistent as possible to sort of like distinct the different tones of characters from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. another way to do that is to have one character speak really, really formally, and then another character to not.
Yeah, kind of like I think that Tolkien actually does this with the accents in Lord of the Rings, or at least like, well, the hobbits do not speak like any other person in Middle Earth in terms of their culture. That's just how it works.
Yeah, they're just far more modern. In some way, it's almost a defect, but it's useful in terms of characterization as a different people.
Yeah, everyone else kind of speaks similarly in Middle Earth. Like, they speak in this very high and elevated language, and the hobbits slowly develop that as the books go on.
Yeah, and some characters speak in a different. Tolkien himself knows that some characters speak in different styles, like Gandalf and Aragorn will speak in different styles depending on who they're talking to.
Yeah. That's kind of the diplomat types, I think, is the people that, like, I think, like, but it's just, like, kind of Rohan and Gondorians kind of talk similarly.
Pretty much. And elves.
Yeah.
Dwarves are maybe a little bit different.
Yeah. It's the dwarves that go swimming with little hairy women.
No comment.
Jesus.
Please don't.
What? I'm quoting a dwarf. God.
Don't.
Playing innocent doesn't make you innocent, Dan.
No, we're not fooled.
We are not.
Yeah, well, I keep thinking about, like, it was like, Blair was like, he's too gross even for you, Bright Lord. I was going, oh, okay, challenge accepted.
No, don't. No, you're too gross for you.
Indeed. But that's just life, isn't it?
Yeah, speaking of tones,
So I also employ.
Oh, go for it, Balerion.
Thank you. I also do a mild archaism in my novel. I have people say, so that just because I like certain words, I like durst as a durst, D-U-R-S-T as a past tense of dare, so I use that. And for some reason, I like the use of murder for murder, so I spell it with the TH instead of the D. Things like that.
I'm trying to kind of reconcile mine at the moment because I might have to. I'm debating making up my own swear words for the characters because I have a little bit of like a formal tone with my prose, but I have characters who 100% swear quite a lot. And I'm trying to decide if maybe it's just it needs a rewrite to kind of work a bit better. But it's also like, I don't know, trying to figure out like the sorts of how to reconcile dialogue with the prose style is kind of, especially when you're doing a fantasy thing. It's like, I don't know, that's the whole thing.
Like storming.
Because I don't want to be as obvious as that, and I do have like I have like religion related stuff that is a little bit more subtle than storming.
Or Stormfather.
But those things kind of feel a bit like saying Jesus Christ. So it's like, so what's the equivalent of fuck? I feel like a storm doesn't have the same kick to it, but that's okay with Sanderson because Sanderson doesn't need that kick. But yeah, I don't know. It's a interesting one.
It's also very easy to get tonal drift if you're not careful.
Yes. It often gets it can get really bad. Like, one example of, like, another example is actually Beastly, if anybody has read that book.
No.
Basically, like, he starts off as, like, this cocky jerk, and then by the end he's kind of just this, like, typical, like, white protagonist.
Who protagonist?
I think I tortured myself. I think I tortured myself with the movie at one point, like, you know, because YA.
it's basically modern day Beauty and the Beast, but it's like, wow, this story does not really work in a modern context very well.
There actually was a modern Beauty and the Beast.
Oh yeah, George R. R. Martin did it, I think.
No, before him. I mean, in the early '90s or late '80s.
There's also
I thought he was
there's
a screenwriter on that
also
show.
There's also the live action Aladdin, which tried to modernize the tale, but that doesn't work.
Oh, we're back to Disney again, and oh god. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to do that, but you brought it up with the modern day Beauty and the Beast.
Well, I think basically it's like literally modern day. It's not even Disney. It's a YA Beauty and the Beast movie in our time.
Well, it was a television show in the
Yeah.
It was a television show in the '80s and '90s. It wasn't exactly the same though. It wasn't the same story.
No, it's very different. It's more like he's a superhero mutant protecting creatures rather than he's taking her hostage.
Yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of just make sure you know your word and tone choice is going to be. Don't use bathos ever unless you're deliberately making a joke or you're in a comedy. Like wildly figure out tones that kind of even different tones can work together, but you gotta pick your tones and stick with them for at least the scene that you're going with, unless you want some kind of dramatic reversal. Usually it's easier to go from comedy to drama than it is to go from drama to comedy.
And yet people try to do it anyway, and they do it really, really badly.
Unless you're deliberately trying to puncture something, unless that's the whole point of the thing. Unless you've got somebody who's really self-important, acting like they're big and powerful, and all of a sudden,
that part's. Yeah, I think that part can. I think that can work, but it's kind of I think it's easier. I think that's usually kind of for the end, but kind of you don't want to go. I guess you don't. Maybe not you don't want to go. I think you don't want to necessarily go from deep terror to comedy really quickly, or have scenes juxtaposed against each other that are not similar or don't work together.
Yeah, you'd have to be,
careful about it.
Yes.
Tonal whiplash is very easy to give people. If you're in a dramatic moment and then you have one of the characters prank call the other.
Yeah.
For freaking
for no reason.
Mama joke. No.
Or have a pop brownie skit when in the middle of a person applying to a college university.
Yep, Sauron slips on a banana peel.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're deliberately going for comedy, bathos is a little bit better, but when you kind of go for mixing of comedy and dramedy, that's when it gets rough sometimes.
I mean, when it comes to whiplash of tone, again, go to is the Cornettos, Shaun the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End. Watch those three. Go, wow, these are the most technically competent movies I've ever seen in my life, and the story is frickin' on it. I've got to be this good if I want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because whiplash can actually be done well.
Mm-hmm.
Contrary to what some evidence may say, but it's really, really, really hard.
Yeah. So, we do have another person coming on, and I'll bring him in. Just let me bring him in.
What the?
Welcome, Aspiring.
Yes, hello. Sorry I'm late. I had to unload. I had to unload all of my luggage into my house.
Oh.
Really?
Oh, that must have been a riot.
Indeed.
Oh yeah, it was. Thankfully, it finished quickly, so I'm here.
Yay! So we haven't gotten to weird yet / unique weapons yet, but I think that will be the next one. Let's see where, and then we'll do a multi POV. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at it, like it's kind of weird. It just kind of looks weird, or how I've written it down. Let me actually so let's move. I think any other thoughts on tone / word choice? Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered.
Yeah, I think we covered it all.
Alrighty.
We've done it all.
All of it. All of the things about tone.
Okay, weapons. Unique weapons. So Tarek actually gave this suggestion where it's just like a weapon that's kind of weird. Like I kind of use this as an example. Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it. So currently the people talking are aspiring me and Becca if she wants to talk. That's kind of like the so kind of like I don't really have much to say on this topic. You can I'm giving you guys the floor, so go for it.
So the reason I brought this up on the Discord when I did was because I'm trying to justify giving Aviana a rope dart. And if you don't know what that is, if you've ever played Mortal Kombat, it's the move Scorpion has where he goes, "Come here," and he throws that rope and it hits the guy and he pulls him back. That's the idea of a rope dart. It's essentially a knife tied to a piece of rope. But if you didn't know this, rope dart is also a dance. People do some amazing things with it using the rope, physics, and I think it is kung fu, actually. I think the martial art associated with it is kung fu. I was looking for a way to give Aviana a very unique weapon. I kind of wanted her to have a grappling hook at first, but I'm like, no, I can't justify that, but maybe I can justify this. Only issue is that it's a very particular set of skills you need to use that weapon effectively, and I don't think the culture, it's a Chinese thing, so and the Chinese culture does not exist in this book. So it's a question of, can I justify this, or is it just a neat idea, but I can't actually use it?
Well, I'd say part of justification is how useful that weapon would be. Why does she use this weapon? Like, what will she be using this weapon for?
She would mostly be, since Aviana is not trying to actively kill anyone, she'd be using this weapon more for utilitarian purpose. What I mean by that is, I'm thinking the knife or the knife on the top that is attached to the rope could be coated in this special ore, which will allow it to not necessarily break through armor or through walls, but what it can do is embed itself so that she could use it, say, to scale walls, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think. To scale walls, to swing off things. And then in combat, because it is a rope and it's a wide berth weapon, she has a long-range attack. Also, being a thief, it's a great way to grab things from across the room.
I would say the usefulness of the weapon would justify her wanting it and trying to trade with it.
I was also gonna what Drake's saying in the chat, something similar in that you have, sure, you're basing your cultures and stuff off real cultures, but it's probably not going to have unfolded in exactly the same way, and so there's always a chance of it having been invented in some kind of form. So I don't know that it matters too much if you have something that's a little bit of a different flavor going on.
It's not about matter. How to describe this? It's not really so much about there's no China in this world. It's more about that using this weapon requires a martial arts style that is very odd. Like it's one that is not commonly taught. In fact, it's funny. I was reading this. You have to learn how to use tiger claws before you can use a rope dart. Like there is a progression to using this fucking piece of rope.
Tiger claws.
Could you not have her develop the style?
I don't want to do that. Actually, I could. I could do that, but the question is again, it's all about the justification of it. Can I justify this?
Well, I would say if she was a dancer before deciding to use this weapon, it could just be a weapon that goes very well with what she already has learned in the past.
Well, there are rhythmic gymnasts who use the ribbons. It could certainly be something like that.
Well, the way I was picturing this going is her mentor said, he's showing her this box of weapons and going like, all right, this is stuff from around the world. This is, the various different tools that other people have used. And then he shows her the rope dart and she's going, well, what's this? And he's like, it's supposedly you're supposed to be able to throw this and, you can use it to bind things without getting close to them. It's not like bolas where you throw them, if you get what I mean. And he's basically telling her, I've never found a use for this thing. It seems much better to use a more conventional weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually like unique weapons like that, usually it's for people like John Wick, or at least like John Wick style characters, where they have very acute martial prowess already.
Right.
And then you kind of go from there.
It's just like I was saying, the whole reason I was thinking about it was one, because I kind of want to have a unique weapon. It's, it's unconventional, I will admit. Like, it's a very odd choice. But then again, I've always liked characters who didn't fight in direct combat. I always liked the ones that were more utilitarian. They were willing to, like, they're using very odd weapons, like throwing bombs or setting traps during combat, if you get what I mean.
Out of the box thinkers.
I have a suggestion, actually.
Okay.
What if you have her work up to it? Start with a whip so that she has something similar.
Or even if she's like,
finish with it.
If she's like playing around with stuff and like it's not quite working, but she's sort of working towards something, and then like there's this obscure thing that came from a culture that maybe doesn't even exist anymore, and there's like like some weird little bits and bobs that she can then put together with something else that's and again that's kind of putting it together. I'm
thinking like maybe if I word this right, because now thinking about it, I do agree with both of you, but I'm thinking like maybe this thing was not even meant to be a weapon initially. It was meant to be a fishing tool.
I was going to say something similar as well. Like, what if she just sort of she finds it and they're like, "That's not what." No, you don't do that with it. But it kind of she finds a way to function it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, maybe she sees like one of the sailors nearby fishing with it, and she goes, "Well, what's that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a rope dart. You throw it into the water, you pull a fish back up," and she's like, "Huh, that's a neat idea."
Have her master like a specific set of movements that like could like a particular trade that like has a similar set of movements, and she can kind of apply it.
Actually, to whoever said, I think it was Neff maybe who was talking about the dance, about her dancing, or was it Aspiring?
That was me.
Okay, sorry. To Aspiring's point, she is trained to be a dancer, so it would make sense that she might be using this as a gymnastic sort of thing.
Yeah, which is why I brought up the rhythmic gymnastics thing.
Yeah. There is a way to make this work, but again, like the reason why I brought this up is because let's face it, everybody has a sword, everybody has a legendary dagger or some kind of legendary weapon. I want to give something that people wouldn't expect, specifically for a character that does not want to kill people.
Well, there's a nice layer to it when you have some unique. It doesn't even have to apply to weapons. Sometimes when a character has just like a signature thing that they have. Well, I mean that's the word signature. It's like it's nice to have something that sort of almost represents the character's personality or what they're representing in the story or whatever. Like as like a, I don't know, it just it ties things together a bit.
Yeah, I think it would make sense for someone who already has like a skill set that works with that weapon rather than restarting to learn how to use a more conventional weapon. Especially since I think the utility of the throwing dart sounds far better for a thief than a sword or knife.
And you've also got the advantage. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. And maybe having her working towards it with like starting with a whip or something, which is a similar type of weapon, to make sure that she doesn't actually hurt herself when she's first picking it up. Because it sounds as though the weapons, the whip and the what was it? The
rope dart.
Rope dart? It sounds as if a whip and a rope dart are similar enough that she'd be able to apply the things she learns for a whip to her eventual weapon.
Tara, is that true? Because I think a whip and a throwing dart might
No, I mean they're both long-ranged weapons, and if you figure out how to use one, while it's not something that's a one-to-one applicable, you can still use the precautions you've developed for a whip for the rope dart.
You could also just make it so that dancing she does uses ribbons, which would already make her somewhat familiar with that kind of stuff.
Well,
that too.
Well, the whole idea with the weapon is it's more about the physics. Like, if you guys have seen the anime Castlevania with the way Trevor uses the whip, it's a very similar... it's similar to the whip in terms of the way the physics work, because essentially the whip is a type of rope, as is the rope dart. The difference is that with the rope dart, because it's attached to a rope rather than to a maybe a 4 or 5 foot long whip, you have much greater range, assuming you can throw harder.
Yeah, which is why I equated the two, even though it's not a one-to-one equivalence.
Right.
But you could have an interesting thing with it that she's not only, getting a couple of skills from that she can apply, but also like that she's using it and going, there's things about this that I don't like, and she's learning like what she doesn't want from the whip to give it a little bit more of a...
One of the most interesting things that I was thinking about this for context, I was experimenting with the idea of that if you throw somebody at any moment, right, they're going to look at that thing, even if it's for a brief moment, giving you a kind of opening, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you attach a rope to that, if you have like a rope dart like that, you've just created not only the distraction, but also the weapon as well, which I always found kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I am regretting not putting where there's a whip, there's a way into my clip.
Hell.
No!
Jesus Christ.
That is an amazing song, and you are all Philistines for not liking it.
But
oh, shut up, you heathen!
But one of the other interesting things is that I was looking at other unique weapons. Have you heard of Chinese hook swords?
No.
I think I have, like the Shaolin monk swords, where like you can basically hook the swords together and swing them around. And it's like very specific training, like Shaolin monk.
Well, the way a hook sword, from what I understand, is it's a sword with a curved blade, looking like a fish hook, if you imagine that. But what I found interesting is that the way the grip works is you can use the bottom of it as daggers because they're sharp.
So like this?
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, there's actually a neat thing of like they pitted, for whatever reason on Deadliest War, they decided to pit Shaolin monk versus Maori warrior.
Oh God, no! Please.
Yeah, and like they used this particular weapon, and like what one of them was able to do is he was able to just like specially hook the top the tips together and then spun it around. I was able to do some serious damage to a ballistic shell torso with it.
God damn it!
It is a neat weapon. Like looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But seriously, none of you guys have ever thought to put in some kind of unique weapon like that, something very unconventional.
A non-European weapon.
Yeah, non-European maybe, or something you normally wouldn't use.
The most I currently have is a sight.
I don't have much weapon-based storytelling currently. Probably at some point, but a lot of it's like talking.
And most of Oh, go for it. Sorry.
No, I'm done.
That's my name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Use the stupid pun.
Well, I would say
don't you talk. You've used it.
Well, I don't think that. Well, considering that I am neither dumb nor a lady, I don't know if that necessarily applies to me.
You know what? Drake is right though. And instead of going that whole route of a unique combat scenario or something like that, I'm just gonna give her a gun. Fuck it.
You give her a missile launcher that refills.
No,
itself.
I'm just gonna give her. No. I'm not talking like a powder gun either, like a like a 17th century pistol. I'm talking about a freaking Glock.
You're such a fucking American.
She's a time traveler. She's like, I'm going to fuck everybody.
No. Her inventor friend, her alchemist friend, is like, look what I made. Just slams the Glock on the table.
Oh, that's.
She looks at us like, what the fuck is this thing?
I love the fact that the Russian said, "Yay, gun."
I'm imagining it has like an extended clip and or an extended magazine and a red dot sight.
God, we set him off
they
now.
Give the Joker gun with the 7-chamber.
That's not a Glock.
It's a Glock extended.
That's a revolver.
Well, at least he's buying American. Well, at least he's buying American. Like Armageddon told me.
You don't need a Glock. Just get the 7-chamber revolver.
Or get the super shotgun from Doom.
Oh yeah, the double. She walks up with a double barrel. I don't know how she's not killing people, but
the bullets are non-lethal. Just say they're non-lethal.
No. If you don't address it, it's fine.
Just say she thinks they're asleep.
Drake for one ring. Oh, Drake had a one. I think Drake had a 1 ring thing. Coming a little bit earlier. Never mind. Sorry. Just throw a banana peel and make the enemy slip on it.
Oh my god!
Technically, there is actually it's actually interesting. There's a game called like Harem Scarum. It's a Billy and Mandy game where you. The banana peel is an overpowered thing that you can use to kill 3 or 2-shot enemies with 1 kill.
Because they fall off the screen or something.
Yeah, you don't get any points, but the weird thing about that game is that they don't give you points for like those enemies anyway. So
I remember that game.
Yeah, it's still fun. I think it's still on CartoonNetwork.com. Yeah. So
don't care.
In response to Balerion's comment, I'm not just imagining someone going back in time with 2 water pistols and shooting water at everyone, and everyone just bows this person like he's a demigod of Poseidon. Like, oh my god, your power.
I'm imagining you get shot with this liquid and they just look down and take their hand against it, rub it, smell, and go, "Is this lamp oil?" Boom.
That's one way to make a water gun deadly.
Yeah.
That actually sounds awesome.
It does. I think I might have to steal that.
Fruit.
Yeah, like actually, it should not be that hard to make a water gun in the past.
No, it shouldn't be.
It's a pump, so no.
Have we finished with the topic?
Yeah, I think so. We're now talking about lamp oil water guns.
Okay.
So writing multiple POVs. I believe that multiple POVs should be Neff, Becca, and Balerion.
I believe so.
So, and aspiring, I believe as well. Well, if he wants to. So I think like in terms of writing multiple POVs, the main thing is just very clearly delineate your characters and how they like think and talk.
Yeah.
And like try not to mix them up. I think
we're back to Martin.
Yeah, be careful with point of view drift, because that can happen.
Yeah.
I know I've caught myself doing it more than once.
What do you
I'm
point of view
actually
drift?
Yeah,
Point
I'm
of
actually
view drift is when you start in one character's point of view and then accidentally get into another character's head
Balerion,
before it's their turn.
Balerion, you had something to say?
Yeah, I actually have problems with this sometimes. I mean, for one thing, I'm rewriting a chapter, and I realized I had no characters from the point of view of this tribe, this so-called barbarian tribe to the north, and I had point of views from everybody else, including like bad guys. I had no points of view for him, so I'm rewriting the things that he is part of the point of view is him. But then at the same time, there are some characters I have that are kind of a little comic. So after they say something, I'll put a little bit of what they're thinking. So I'm moving sometimes to their point of view, because I have this character thinks about food all the time, and all I can ever think about is, I'm hungry. When are we going to have lunch? I'm bored. I'm hungry. When are we going to have lunch?
I remember that guy. I liked him.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to want to go from every single character that I have's point of view, and I think so. Like a big thing is like, especially when you've got a lot of characters, is limit yourself to the characters whose point of view you need to see, because although it might be interesting to be in their heads eventually, at some point, for the most part, you don't want to go overboard. Like I think I've got 8 at the moment. It might go up as there might be a couple that get a couple of chapters later on that up that to maybe 10 or something. But like you don't want to go to too many. You want to, because you, apart from anything else, you want the ones that you've got, like Dunn was saying, you want them to be distinct. And you get to a point where like you can't have that many distinct characters. They start to be a little bit similar to each other or serving similar purposes. So there's like you kind of got to be ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, I also think this goes to a topic that's a little bit off topic, which is how to make your characters more distinct.
Yeah.
Mine are not necessarily terribly. I mean, you can use different degrees of depth of character. You can do Martin, but you don't have to do Martin for it to be a decent story. But there should at least be some way of telling them apart.
Yeah.
And this is where word choice is definitely important, because it depends on how the character. Partly, it depends on how the character talks. So if you have a character that's really formal and then accidentally go into the head of a character that's casual instead, you definitely know that you've got point of view drift and you can fix it. It's easier when it's that dichotomy, but sometimes it's not so easy to catch yourself doing that.
Balerion, did you have anything else to say? I know you got cut off.
Well,
sorry.
Did I?
Oh, I thought you did. Okay, I heard you talk.
Did I? What was I saying last?
I think it was like about Martin, like degrees of differentiation or something.
Oh, that's a little bit. That's a little bit. Just slightly kind of a tangent and maybe its own topic, but I have trouble. I'm not as. But Martin, with Martin, it's very clear-cut. Characters, even minor characters, are very clearly distinguished. I don't think you have to do that necessarily, though, and I'm not quite so good at that. So I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, you can have decent stories. The Pevenzis aren't that clearly distinct, but you can still enjoy the Chronicles of Narnia. They're still good. Or Tolkien.
Yeah. I think the key is if you've got lots of points of view, though, that it's quite easy to get confused. And so a good way of avoiding that is going, okay, let's make these characters just a little bit more distinct so that the reader can go, I'm not just having to remember a name, I can remember a way of thinking, I can remember a uniqueness to the character. I mean, I know when I'm writing, there's an element as well that there are definitely certain points of view that just flow much more because they've got more distinct drives or like unique things about writing their POV that kind of push things on a little bit more or give you something more interesting to focus on, that they might be doing something mundane, but you've got a bit of a different way of showing that. Even though you're still in prose, you've got like just a bit of a different perspective on it.
Yeah. And something to be careful with, do not shove too many POVs too quickly, because you have to think about the reader in this case. Putting too many names and faces to your reader is just going to confuse the fuck out of them.
Yeah, you can lead into it. You can start with just one point of view and then add more points of view gradually, right?
Yeah, you need to kind of build on what you have and then add more. Otherwise, I've had people basically say, "Oh God, this is too confusing. Stop."
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I've got something else scheduled, so I'm gonna hop off now. Okay, bye, guys.
Yeah, no worries. I'll take your place at all the future plays topics.
Okay.
Okay, have a riot.
And she's gone. Shame. Does anyone have anything to say? Because I do have something to bring up.
You may as well.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. But has anyone seen Hill House?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So this is something I'm also doing, and something I thought we should talk about. POVs that do not follow any chronological order and instead fill in the same space of time.
Yes. I mean, Hill House does it kind of like as the way that the story unfolds. It's quite that's like the following of the narrative is the jumping between the POVs.
Yeah.
Or not jumping between them, but moving to each one.
Yeah. Each episode focuses on one of the main five, and they carefully pick them to have the most skeptical one be first, so we see the least amount of what's happening, and then progressively go to characters who have more and more to do with what's happening.
Yeah, it's very. It does unfold very, very nicely. The way that the different POVs work in the same way as like time in a novel or in a story normally, because it feels as if you're moving onwards even though you're going back over the same time. I mean, there's an element as well, because I mean, especially when you've got like a multi-POV fantasy novel as well, you will often have characters that are in different places completely, and it's kind of like dubious whether it's actually happening at the same time or not, which is kind of related but not quite the same thing. But occasionally you will have like things that converge because it's, I don't know, maybe a global thing that's happening at once, or it's like something is causing another thing and it means that they happen to be happening at the same time but you don't realize, or you know. So you can kind of do that to a smaller scale than Hill House, which, because with Hill House, that is the story. But that is kind of, it's an interesting.
Yeah, that reminds me of something tricky about points of view, which is how do the different points of view that you're narrating relate to each other, and trying to do a timeline while you're writing the story and I'm making sure that things aren't too far after or before each other or contemporary. Make sure that the order of events is not too off well, when you're juggling all these characters, it can be quite tricky.
Yeah.
Well,
especially when you mess up like travel times and you have to rewrite everything because the travel is taking too long.
I generally just try to make sure that travel time is as blurry and fudged as possible because otherwise it's just a headache.
Yeah, it gets to be a mess. But even so, I have to say things like a few weeks later, blah blah blah, happened sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing that you need to kind of like keep careful track of, or else like your world will kind of become like, okay, how does the geography work in this? The geography of this place? ?
Yeah,
I normally
question mark.
I normally plan out the entire geography because I am obsessed with these kinds of things for some reason.
I don't have the patience for that, so.
Well, I have a map, so
yeah.
I can say, okay, if it takes such and such an amount of time to travel this distance, and I looked it up and I Googled how long it would probably take, and I'm like, okay, and I note to myself, how long will this probably take, this distance? Okay, these places are such and such an amount of distance apart. Okay, so the journey will take this long, but trying not to get too specific because you'll just get lost.
And you also don't want to get too specific because although most people aren't going to necessarily notice or go into too much detail, but like if it's too like dead on, then that'll look kind of weird because if you've got like any kind of varying landscape or even mud, like depends on the weather, depends on the time of year, depends on how many mountains you got. It's never going to be an exact thing anyway. So it's like you've kind of it's worth just blurring it anyway, so you don't start like But yeah, when you've got more to kind of focus a little bit, like when you've got like the different points of view, it's like trying to make sure I don't know. I think possibly because you're not only focusing on one character, and sometimes you have to have these people meet, and sometimes you have to have like different people going to different places, and maybe one person's traveling and another person isn't, and you've got to like, if you're trying to keep those things happening at a similar time, you've got to figure out what the person who isn't traveling is doing in between and stuff like that.
And if you've got so-and-so writes a letter to such and such a person, the letter has to reach the person a reasonable length of time after it's been sent.
Yeah. And don't do super fast pigeons.
Well, if you jumble around, you can use ravens, but I don't have ravens in my world. Nobody has. The closest thing they have to that is like ship mail.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just do a Sanderson and have little magic pens.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically the span reads are basically Westeros version of Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, they're like email or like instant messaging or something.
Did you just say Westeros?
Yeah, they're not in Westeros.
Sorry.
You did say Westeros.
Yeah, I got thrown off, I guess.
Westeros version of Facebook is the fucking dragons.
Actually, more like the weirwood tree.
I want to see span read conversations in Westeros now. Like that, I love span read conversations. They're like a great little, I don't know. They're always fun. I just want to see Cersei bitching at like her friend across the continent.
I can imagine the Night King just has a spam read and he's like, "How's everything going? Things going to plan?"
He's just
gets frustrated
over in like Ashai or something. He's just
Yeah,
I can imagine Cersei and Jaime doing a spam read conversation after Jaime's over her.
John just tries to use span reads, but no one knows how to write. He's like, "God damn it, this is Westeros. The men are supposed to know how to write."
Yeah.
I think it's more like they'll just go like, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," over and over.
Well, that would be Ygritte talking to John after John gets to the wall, and she keeps sending him messages saying, "You know nothing, Jon Snow. We're gonna get you."
Well, also, that Melisandre says it at one point. And
Yes.
It freaks him out. Any other things about multiple POV narratives? I think a lot of it breaks down to kind of like, gotta pick what kind of character archetype you're going for. Like, even if you're kind of mixing up a bunch of archetypes together, like, maybe like chivalrous poisoner, maybe. You gotta, like, have him, I guess, like, be, like, the polite, suave type, but also, like, mix it in with kind of just, he doesn't view human life as very valuable. Kind of mix those together.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just function the narrative. There needs to be someone fulfilling a certain function, even a quite mundane one. So you need a character to be doing it. You need a character to be the chancellor to give advice to the Lord. So you have such and such a person, and they don't have to have much characterization. They can just exist.
Yeah.
I think that there is a little bit of an element that it's kind of fun to give them a slight little uniqueness, just so that when you're in the moments that you're dealing with them, there's just enough to keep you there. But yeah.
So Drake, have you read Oathbringer? Because that is a good example of a multi-important character brawl with multiple POVs being done really well, where it just keeps flipping to everything that's happening, and it's really important.
I think there's occasionally books that you read and you go, I just do not give a shit about this one particular point of view. It's often when it's one where like there's multiple points of view in one place, and then there's one off across the sea somewhere else, and you're just like, this bit's boring. I want to know what's happening with the rest of them, possibly because you're like attached to the setting and the things going on with the ones together.
Yep, I feel
that's always the one. I mean, I've got one like point of view that it's quite rare at the moment, that's across the sea and then off on an island, and I'm desperately trying to write that as interestingly as possible so it doesn't become one of those. But yeah.
I think that might just be an unfortunate consequence of writing that many characters, because in Way of Kings, when I first read it, I actually ended up skipping every Odlin and Dalinar chapter because I was more engrossed in Kaladin and Shallan's.
I did something similar to that too. Sometimes I would skip and then go back. And this is a problem with Martin. Now he handles it well in the case of the character across the sea, Daenerys, because you're really into Daenerys. But then at Feast for Crows, he starts off with this character in the Iron Islands, and you're like, don't. And then he goes off to Dorne, and I'm like, dude, just give me the characters I know, please. Just, you can do these people afterwards. Just do these. Give me the characters I know, and I have to wait a whole book before we're gonna get to the people I care about. Just
or do some more spacing out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or more skillful interweaving of the characters. Like, you can make a book like plot arc go over multiple books, whether you like it or not. The plot of the books 11 no, it's not 11, books 9, 10, and 11, and the end of 8 of the Wheel of Time is basically like all the characters are embroiled in the same conflict. Or at least like they're the same conflict. Each is involved in each individual conflict for 3 books, and it's very stretched out, and a lot of people really don't like it. And like, yeah, it should have been trimmed to 2 books rather than 3 big books. But that's kind of an example of like, he could have just like interwove a bunch of different characters together and kind of made for a slightly like climaxless book or part 1 book, as opposed to like the last book. But even then, Feast for Crows doesn't really have much of a climax as it is. At least that I didn't notice any climaxes in Feast. I can't remember the climax of Feast for Crows. I guess like Brienne getting nearly killed by Biter Eider and Rorge, or the Cersei being captured by the Faith, or River Run. Those are kind of the climaxes I remember in Feast for Crows, but they weren't like big set pieces. So, any thoughts on this before we move into the next one?
Two things. One, you know how in Mistborn, there's the BS normally starts the thing with a random POV of someone else as a bit of like a world building thing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you guys advise with that? Because I've actually tried doing that once in my book, and I got very negative responses because nobody was interested.
So I have a similar thing in that prologue, interludes, and epilogue are all, apart from one of them, or one or two, although it's more of like it becomes a thing later. They're all like completely unique POVs, and I found that one, if you can, don't make it too long, and two, but when we're talking about distinct characters, this is the point where you need to go like proper distinct with them, and even make the telling of that particular thing just as interesting and unique as possible. Like, because the thing is that otherwise people get a little bit like they wanted to skip over it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've kind of got to go, okay, this is really, really important to be someone different. And yeah.
I get a little impatient with the interludes sometimes. Brando, Sando, but then I come back to them and end up enjoying them. But at least
I got
Lift. I skipped over her first, but then I went, "Ooh, I like her."
I got impatient with them with my first read, but I'm a little bit more just chill reading it now, so I'm less so. But with mine, I'm definitely not doing 3 interludes per gap. I'm just doing one short little bit that gives you a gap between the story that's like a weird little character that's like doing something, with me at least, very directly related to the plot rather than random and out there, and we'll figure out what that means later, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, as he progresses, a lot of the interludes become very, like, character-based. They're characters we know well. Like, I don't think there's a single random character for Rao's interlude, and I think there was only maybe one in Oathbringer that was random. And of course, there's a one character that constantly keeps getting up. Like, Sanderson wants to have one character draw every interlude.
The interludes get a lot less random. They're mostly random in the first book, and least random is it in the last 2 books. In the last two books, I didn't end up skipping them that much. Also, I was less impatient by then.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're enjoying the ride a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yes.
You kind of are like you know the point of where it's going.
I actually when I did my first read of Stormlight, the chapter that I dropped out at, I'm pretty sure was the lift one. But this time around, I was like, yeah, she's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people dropped out for Lift because it was just like, who the hell is this random little girl?
Yeah, but she's kind of cute. So I read afterwards. I'm like, oh, I like her.
She's pretty hilarious.
She's cute. She's cute around other characters.
And she's still in there in the other last 2 books. Spoiler alert, but she's still there doing stuff. So
I don't think that Brandon Sanderson has the guts to kill a child.
Well, either way, she is one of what are considered a main character. Sanderson has said he has plans for her.
Good.
So,
Good.
Yeah. I'm almost considering like doing like a weekly like just recording of like Becca's reaction like per chapter or something. That way we can kind of make sure.
Oh yeah.
Record myself as I'm fucking reading.
No, basically like kind of like a lot of podcasts that I've seen basically will do like chapter by chapter rather than kind of a big overall like book thing at the end. They mostly just go by chapter once a week.
Oh yeah, like Preston Jacobs and Carmine do that.
Yeah. I think Wheel Reads also does it. History of Westeros also does it. Maybe me, you, and Balerion, since Balerion's read all of it, and it's kind of interesting now that we have our one particular like known letter writer in who says something very distinct in Oathbringer and is apparently writing to Hoyd.
Yeah, the letters in all of in those little weird excerpts are very interesting.
Yeah. Neat thing, Balerion, is that the person who writes one of the the letters in Oathbringer is actually a character in Mistborn.
Oh yeah, you mentioned something about that. I don't know who.
Same goes for Rao.
Yeah, he reappears when his thing reappears in Rhythm of War. Yeah.
It's kind of funny that they call it Rao.
Yeah. I admit to have been slightly miffed when I realized it was just the same guy, and I was like, I was hoping there would be another person, because there's like 3 letters in Oathbringer, and now there's just 1. But it revealed enough that I was like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, God. Gotta get there. Damn.
Yeah. So, any other things about multiple POVs before we go into balance between showing rather than telling?
Antagonist POVs?
Antagonist POVs? I don't think there's anything different in terms of like the fundamentals or the craft work. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you mean by antagonist POVs? What do you mean?
Basically, you have an antagonist, and I'm kind of thinking somewhat Travangian. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Taravangian?
Taravangian, because he is technically an antagonist, and so you're allowed to see his thoughts and what he's kind of doing. But at the same time, you can't have him reveal anything too important too early. It's like how you need to find a way to have those POVs placed in a way you keep information to yourself until you want the reader to know them.
Luckily, he is sometimes dumb.
Yeah, that kind of bit where like his intelligence waxes and wanes based on the day, which is an interesting story device.
Yeah, Cersei would also be an antagonist POV, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that like it would be difficult to kind of do a Euron POV because he
no,
quite a bit.
I have
Stannis to a certain extent, but go for it.
I have a regular POV that's an antagonist, but she, although it seems perhaps at first that she's like a major antagonist, but it kind of unfolds that she is also being manipulated. And so, like, there's like a further antagonist that's doing like the actual stuff that you're discovering. She's just doing bitch shit. So that's a way around it that you can kind of have, because villain POVs are really fun. They're really fun to write.
Yeah.
Let yourself loose.
Yeah, I have a sort of antagonist POV, like the prince. I guess he's not exact. Well, I guess that would count. I don't have a quick way. The Emperor point of views. That would be kind of disgusting and stupid at the same time.
We don't. Well, I am morbidly fascinated by the idea of having the mindset of a man who wants to see cross-dressing monkeys.
Well, but you know what he wants because he says what he wants.
Yeah. Well, I'm into.
There's no mystery.
Well, it's kind of like why he wants it is interesting.
Well, it's not that interesting. No comment.
Stinger PV. Yeah, that's actually. I actually like those things. Like you get a good one at the end of Rhythm of War. Nothing in particular. No specifics, but you get a good one at the end of Rhythm of War.
Stinger.
Short little scenes with few description of the overarching villain, commenting on the entire adventure. Like an example might be the end of Avengers, the end cutscene where to challenge them is to court death. That would be an example of like a Stinger POV.
I don't think I ever saw
that. You remember at the end where X tells X that he's been fired at the end of Rhythm of War?
Oh God.
Do you not remember the last chapter of Rhythm of War?
Rhythm of War. Oh, okay. I think I remember now. It was some random chap who writes like a diary or something. On the his thoughts in the diary are on the chapter headings and stuff, and then suddenly he appears in the last chapter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean that guy?
Yeah, I'm trying to be as
chapters
big
in the
as
entire
possible.
series. You had to talk about the last chapter of the latest book.
It's not even, they're lying. That's not even the last chapter.
Let's spoil it for her.
Well, the nice thing is it isn't. The nice thing is I kept it as vague as possible. You will not get it until you read the book.
Sure, but still.
They'll die at the end.
now I get the "you're fired" reference. I thought you meant the epilogue. I was like, who does this guy say he's fired to? Oh, that guy.
I love that I just have to be like, all I need to say is you're fired, and then you get it. That's great.
I don't exactly
I'm going to go insane in a minute.
What? What?
I'm going to go insane in a minute. God.
I thought you said something about going Vader in a minute.
No, thankfully not. No.
Well, for
the
one
fun
thing,
thing?
Becca is not a eunuch like Anakin Skywalker is.
No comment.
That is not a statement that I thought I was going to hear today.
That seems to happen a lot on these streams.
I'm just going to quietly let that go and not think about it again.
Yep. I'm actually going to leave in like 10 minutes or less.
Okay, so we'll balance between showing and telling. I think is the next one.
Done.
Yes.
I need to go now. I wish you all a lovely day.
All right. See you.
See you.
Bye.
And then there were 5.
Alrighty. Well, this has actually worked pretty well, I think, so far at least.
Yeah.
Tarek, do you want to, since Neff isn't able to come on, totally go for it. I think now we can kind of just let everybody talk as they feel like it.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So, like, with telling and showing, this is actually a neat example that they actually decided to use with this, where kind of like, it's kind of like telling is vague, whereas showing is kind of going a little bit more detail. What is kind of the utility of both? Would you guys say? For me, it's kind of just like telling is you can go kind of like say, okay, this non-important detail, I can cover this in a very short amount of time, whereas this important detail, I can go into a little bit more depth on.
Well, telling is far more useful for exposition, while showing is much better, in my opinion. Telling is much better for a logical response to something, while showing helps a lot more with trying to get an emotional response out of the reader.
Yeah.
I find it really tricky sometimes because I like doing the dialogues. I've got lots of dialogue, but then I want to because it's a different. I'm trying to present the world to the reader, and the main purpose of the story is this world. So I need to have descriptions of things so they'll see that things do not necessarily look the same as they would in the world they're used to. So at first, what I had with a lot of was lengthy description, not terribly lengthy, but reasonably detailed dialogue. So I'm not sure how well that works. So sometimes I'm trying to vary up a little bit or put things in conversation or something, but still, it's tricky.
There's also a little bit of an element of that you can kind of show one thing by telling another. And often that's in dialogue, and that you'll be perhaps like just having a character state something about the world, but either the fact that they said it, or the way that they're saying it, or some level of context around it is like doing a showing act, but like it's not necessarily about the thing that's being said.
Yeah, it helps when the point of view character is someplace where they're not used to. So then you can describe it, and still it's from their. You can it still in the sense that it's from their point of view. But then if it's something that they would have known from the very time they were born, like Lady Margaret knows what this castle looks like from as long as she's been alive, she's known what this castle looked like. She's lived there all her life. So
there's an element as well, a little bit of like the style that you're writing in. If you've got a little bit more of an elevated kind of style, you can kind of tell a little bit more. Or if you're going, I mean, I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, and Neil Gaiman likes to tell for effect, like to go as a matter of fact statement, you know, in a kind of nod to things, you know, like older sounding works, you know, like a Narnia thing of where it just inserts a bit of information, like an opinion, or you know, like a this is how it is kind of statement, that it adds a little bit of quirk. And if that's kind of how your style is going, you can get away with like just doing a little bit more of the telling than maybe another writer might.
I think it works very well, especially like telling versus showing works well with like omniscient narrators. When you're doing like third person limited, it's harder to it's harder to do like telling really well, or like get away with like telling. I mean,
you can do it. You can. It depends on what the context is. If you've got third person limited and you're going quite really in their head, you can kind of do it as a sort of passing opinion of the character, and that kind of works because that's kind of another case of like it's technically showing maybe an attitude that they've got, but it's also probably telling maybe a bit of world building, you know, so you're sort of doubling up the role that it's playing.
I think like generally like I think like it's mainly like in the prose, not the dialogue, that like showing rather than telling is kind of the big thing.
Well, I mean, in dialogue too, like you can, you know, you can show a personality very well with dialogue, if you get what I mean, like specifically with the word choice and the reactions.
I mean, like in terms of like, so, like, when you tell something in prose versus like you're like telling it in dialogue, it's easier to get away with saying it in dialogue versus like in the prose.
That is true.
Because like when like you just kind of like say, hey, this is just how it is, and you can just kind of say, okay, like that's the person, that can be the person's character, that could also be like how it is. There's very little like differences to it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so and so knew that blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. So and so knew. Things like that.
I mean, it's only obvious.
Yeah, and then there's and then what Tolkien does is he has the Hobbit stand in for the reader, so people who know things like Gandalf will explain things to the hobbits, and sometimes I think that they're explaining things that the hobbit ought to know. It seems like Frodo ought to know who Saruman is because he's so important. But anyway, Gandalf reveals that, and then the reader sort of knows who Saruman is. Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in that vein, like I think that's kind of almost what I was touching on what you were saying, Dan. Like, if your prose style is a little bit more dialogue-y, for lack of a better word, as in like the prose itself feels a little bit like it's acting a bit like the dialogue of the character, because you're acting a bit more like you're in the character's head, you can get away with telling a little bit more, but you obviously don't want to do it too much. But And also, I that was another thing as well. Like using telling as like a kind of the payoff is quite a good way of like kind of sneaking it in, because meaning that it's like something that the reader's been waiting for. You know, so you can kind of, because telling tends to have a bit more of a punch, whereas showing is a little bit more gradual, but by the virtue of the fact that it takes a bit longer.
Yeah, it's less jerky.
Mm.
I think like an example of actually is like Lewis or Tolkien kind of go with like the narrator is a character within the book, or at least like the narrator is the source of the information rather than kind of like you're seeing it like a movie. It's more like you're being told a story rather than you're seeing the story play out in front of you.
Lewis loves putting himself in his books.
Yeah. It's kind of one of the reasons I actually like find Lewis like really unique and entertaining in a lot of ways. I do enjoy the books quite a bit, and I especially love Sir Patrick Stewart doing the reading for the last battle.
Yeah, he does this in the Space Trilogy too. He turns up there in a couple of places. So he'll just turn up as a character and say. In fact, Lewis turns up as a character at the beginning of Paralandra.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I actually haven't read Lewis's Space Trilogy. I've only read the Narnia books and a little bit of Screwtape Letters.
Yeah. Worth a shot.
Yeah. Okay. I think like it's just kind of understanding like when and where to use it. Like if you're kind of like saying like you need to get somewhere quick, definitely like use tell. But if you kind of want something to be like a little bit slower, you got to use a little bit more of like a showing, so that you kind of bring the reader in. Like you just say, "Oh, go for it."
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on like how quickly and clear do you need this information to be. If it's not as important that the reader immediately knows it, that that it's just like clear in their head, then you can. That's when you show, like when it's you know it's okay for them to give them some time to figure it out. Whereas if it's like, look, if you don't know this, none of the stories are going to make any sense. Then that's when you tell. You know.
Yeah, it's really tricky it's really tricky with some of the world building ish stuff, because then you've got details that all the characters would know. All the characters would know what the months are in the calendar. They all know what the chief religious figures are, and so you have to explain these things somehow. Well, I sort of do that with telling for the religious figures, because I have the main character, the girl, doing her catechism, but you can only do that to a limited extent if it's things that everyone would know.
Yeah, I mean, you can do things like I don't know. Example is that the temple places in the religion that I've got, they're called Shapora, and so do you sit there and do you say a Shapora, by the way, is a temple, or do you describe it as having a spire and having priests coming in and out and having a worship hall? You know, that's.
I mean, you can do both. It doesn't need to be mutually exclusive.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's like it depends on what is needed in that moment and what sounds like it fits into the narrative that you're going for. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like, you know, demonizing, you know, because even like the phrase "show don't tell" really kind of scares writers into never ever telling anything, and it's like sometimes you need to. Sometimes you don't need to describe it for 5 billion chapters. You could just say one sentence.
Yeah, don't write according to just a bullet list of rules.
Yeah, kind of like understand what's best based on the story you're telling, because every story is kind of unique, is different to a certain degree.
I have something similar in my book where an Ingra is a temple, so I kind of alternate them a bit sometimes. The Ingra or the temple, and then I might say, they went to the Ingra, the temple was blah, 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 blah. You know, sort of alternate the words a bit. So it's clear that they both refer to the same thing. from the context. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how, like, do you assume the reader's intelligence and then just say, hey, like, if you don't get it, like, you need to reread? Where do you kind of assume that point?
When you have lots of people going, I have no idea what is happening, and you're
like, if you have 8 people reading your stuff and one of them is confused by something and the other 7 aren't, and you cannot see how this guy got into this weird conclusion, disregard it, because I think that's just the him problem. I had to deal with this actually very recently, where some guy came to a weird conclusion with his criticism, and I asked every other reader I had, can you see how he came to this conclusion? All of them were like, no. And neither could I, so I just disregarded it. I'm like, that was him being stupid.
Just remember, Gimli wanted Sam and Frodo to die.
Gimli wanted Frodo and Sam to die. That makes sense, actually.
Oh, God.
Good old cinematic venom. Sorry, man. That was a bad video, and it will kind of be a punching bag for a long time.
I don't think people will stop ever
remembering that.
Yeah, though,
Oh,
admittedly,
my God.
like, admittedly, the poor guy has kind of, like, said, I am sorry, this was a bad video. I'm genuinely sorry. This really sucked. It was really bad. I deserve all the hate. It was terrible.
I feel like really bad doesn't cover it though. Like, what the fuck?
He just needs to embrace the jokes of what he messed up in that video, and it will sooner or later pass away.
Oh no!
Yeah, like Norms and Merlin.
Oh, actually, I think he did embrace it. He did a whole stream where he reacted to it, and he's just like, "Dang, the gay jokes are way too much here. I made a big mistake here." Here to put it, like, 1 in every 5 minutes of this 50-minute review.
Yeah.
That's the over the trip. Jesus.
They're not good ones, is the problem.
Are there really any good gay jokes? I haven't heard that many
Yes.
good ones.
They're hard to do, but they do exist.
Somewhere out in the ether, they're like unicorns, or Becca and Tarek's relationship.
What? I zoned out for a second there. Wait.
Zone out just to hear Becca and Tarek's relationship.
I was like, huh? Why are you talking about us?
I was thinking that your relationship is like are like good gay jokes. It's very rare, like a unicorn.
No comment.
Right. I mean,
are you saying
I'll take
their
that as a weird compliment and move on? I don't.
Are you saying their kind of relationship is rare, or the relationship in general is rare?
I'm not
Why
sure
are
what
we
the difference
talking
would be.
Yeah.
One saying they have a relationship and it's a very rare kind. The other one says they don't have one most of the time.
No, let's go with their
Tarek,
type of
where have you
relationship
gone?
is rare.
Why are you making me deal with this on my own?
Yeah, you cad. Go help defend your lady, you. Jeez.
Tarek's looking for his knife to murder us.
No, he's just gonna murder me. I think that you're fine.
For now.
Yeah. And we'll all help him.
Yeah, me most of all.
Yep.
What?
Well, normally also said, before I go, because I have to go soon, normally also said that the wildlings wouldn't be able to mate with people south of the wall because they've been separated for 8,000 years, and that would surprise very much a large part of the population of Latin America, which were descended from people who were separated for 30,000 years. So.
I can't handle it. That's actually hilarious. When did he say this? I need the title of timestamps.
You need the context of what made him go to this conclusion and him trying to defend it.
Yeah, I know. I know he said did Gandalf inspire Merlin, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, that wasn't one of the when we were still doing the Blu-rays, and the other one. Well, you were still doing the Blu-rays, and the thing about the wildlings being separated by 8,000 years since not mating was also at one of those. And I have no idea about the Tim Curry in Indian because I don't know who Tim Curry is or whatever.
How do you not know who Tim Curry is?
Because I don't follow actors and actresses, because I don't go around tripping behind celebrities. I got more interesting things to think about.
I just know him because I just know who Tim Curry is because I have a photographic actor memory.
Yeah, I just don't care about actors. I just whatever, you know.
You've never seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Have you seen Home Alone 2?
I've heard of Home Alone and Home Alone. I'm probably of Home Alone 2.
Tim Curry's in who's Tim Curry in Home Alone 2?
He is the
some guy.
The concierge. He's the concierge.
Yeah, he is the concierge. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the guy who says a limousine and a pizza for you, sir.
I definitely don't remember this guy.
I see. So he's a pretty important role then. I see.
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
CT, this is correct. Everyone with the last name of Curry is Indian.
And everyone at
oh my god!
So was Gandhi's real last name Curry?
Whose real last name?
Gandhi. You know, you've heard of him. He's not an actor, but he's still fairly important.
He's
Gandhi. Sorry,
he's Gandhi Curry.
Is that the guy who launches nukes?
What?
That was a civilization joke.
Oh yeah. That's right. Gandhi is the leader of India in civilization. Yeah. I do get that joke now.
What the fuck? They made Gandhi the leader of India and had him just launch nukes at people.
Well, I mean that's what leaders do in civilization.
Gandhi's like, you know what? Starving myself's not that fun. Let's create nuclear warheads.
Yeah.
That's
that way we can force everyone into a famine by destroying all the farming quality of the earth.
If I cannot eat, then no one can eat.
You know what? I'm going to force everyone to become non-violent by throwing nukes at them.
Yes. Cool. There can't be violence if everyone's dead.
It cannot be violence if I am not the one pressing the button, but my assistant can.
This is the best. I love this. We've been both focused and funny.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I think that's pretty much it for Show Don't Tell. Do we want to save character arcs for a different time, or should we do it now?
I'd say save it for a different time. I'm getting really hungry.
I'm going to have to go on my walk now.
Weakling.
Alrighty. Well,
nothing weak about walking.
Well,
no, I was talking about him leaving and being hungry.
Yeah, since there's actually like a lot of stuff to cover with
character arcs in general.
Yeah, with character arcs. Yeah. Like there's like actually 5 types of character arcs, and you could do spend 30 minutes on each one.
Oh god.
Really?
This could be its own stream, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is so overcomplicated these days.
Well, actually this is fairly simplified. This is just like generic plot point assembly.
Stark truth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, Stark isn't capitalized and truth is.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I just found this online.
Hint isn't capitalized. Lie is. All right. Yeah, the capitalization is a little weird, but hey, whatever.
Meh.
Yeah. Well, we'll do this another time. But yeah, this was good. We managed to spend about a couple hours on each one. Yes, Ahsoka is indeed Shiny's waifu, and honestly, like she's I'm not
she's
sure.
shit now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm thinking like I'm debating whether or not like she's better than I know Anomaly will murder me if he hears this, but like better than his precious Pete Portman.
Better than who?
His
Porkman.
Peak.
Another actor, I gather.
That was Padme.
Yeah, he's in love with Padme Amidala from specifically from Attack of the Clones.
Well, she's kind of cute.
Yeah, she's pretty cute.
I would go for Ahsoka over Padme if we're talking just appearance-wise.
Oh.
Padme is not that great, okay? She's kind of generic.
Yeah, she's cute though.
And also, character-wise, Padme doesn't have much character.
That's
and the
true.
character she does have is weird.
She's way underwritten. She hardly gets to do much of anything, really. It's true.
Yeah. She's kind of just Anakin's emotional both savior and punching bag.
She's kind of his foil, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. She unfortunately doesn't have much without him.
She's also kind of dumb like he is. She's just dumb in a different way. At least I think so.
Those two are meant for each other and how they're done. And Ahsoka actually does go through a somewhat interesting arc in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I better run.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all for coming. We will call it good there. Adios. Bye.
Bye.
Iron Man.